Art Against Mental Illness.
So I've been quite prolific of late. I think this is partly due to a certain amount of pent-up creative frustration, because it was really too cold to do a lot of stuff, the sort of stuff that I like doing over the coldest part of the winter. So my output really slowed down, but it's come back and I'm really quite buoyant at the moment. I'm very productive, and to the point where I'm thinking I've got to lay all my works out that I've done over the last sort of 6 months and see how much of it there is and what it really feels like as a collection of work. And my artworks are always quite big, usually at least 1 metre along one edge, and so it's not something I can just do on my workshop floor or in my house. I'm going to have to use the floor in a rather large old cinema building next door to me, which I'm able to access. Anyway, I'll do that and maybe share the video at some point, but sort of wondering to myself why I'm so prolific right now. I think it's partly down to the fact that I can be, and I recently bought a job lot of new canvas, so I'm not lacking in materials. But I actually think there's something else going on here. Partly I'm quite comfortable with the type of work that I'm doing at the moment. It's some of the best work I think I've ever done, but also it's quite a lot more coherent and following a particular track that feels like the culmination of various sort of tracks, both in the realism and abstract sides of my artistic practice. It feels a little bit like those two sides have come together quite comfortably. So the work I'm doing at the moment feels very natural, feels very like a comfy shoe or something. I don't have to think too hard about it. It just sort of comes, which is good, because that's when I'm in the state where I'm getting the most out of my artistic practice in terms of its benefits to my health. Well, I think there's something else going on here, which is possibly somewhat bound up with that same fact, is that I think I'm getting better at knowing when to stop. And it's something I've always struggled with. And it's one of the most important and difficult skills to learn, especially when starting out as an artist. And it's particularly salient, I think, to painters, but I can imagine it maps quite well to pretty much any creative endeavour. I've often found in the past that I'm really pleased with how a piece of work is going, but have this sort of set idea as to what a finished piece of work, what attributes it has. So at some point in the earlier stages of a work, I'll I'll stand back and think to myself, man, that looks really awesome. And this means that this piece is going well. And so then I just carry on. I think to myself, oh, this is going to look mega awesome when it's finished. And then, you know, X hours or days later, I sort of stand back and go, well, that's still pretty good. But I almost feel like it was better earlier. That moment when I stood back and thought to myself, well, this is going really well, was maybe where it is almost finished. Maybe it was finished. But because I had this sense that a piece of artwork should have certain attributes and should feel finished in a certain way, a bit like, you know, if you'd produced a bit of furniture and, you know, you'd not varnished it, or, you know, you finished your book and you published it without a cover, that it needs these things, and this is how it's supposed to look. But I started to think more and more as this same situation arose over and over again, by which I mean having that feeling at some point during the process that this is good, and then feeling later on that although I produced something that was still good, it would have been better had I stopped. And I think that it's been a really hard lesson to learn for me, coming from a sort of lineage of, or, you know, a set of influences that fundamentally focus on realism and really sort of capturing an object or a person or a thing as it actually looks in front of my eyes, versus, you know, something a little bit more abstractified, and where more of the process and the technique is visible rather than trying to hide it. And I've developed a painting process and practice over very many years, whereby I create a mess on the canvas and then cover it up, because I really enjoy that process of creating the mess. But that in itself never felt like a finished item to me. And then when I started painting over it, I'd end up painting most of it out and then feeling really disappointed that I'd done that. And I think through my work on abstraction that comes and goes, seems to be what I do at winter when it's just too cold to do anything else. It focuses me back on those abstractions in a way that I sort of can't get away from them. Is that I have to start thinking, well, is this finished? And what does this feel and look and make me think and feel in its own right? And that's really started to inform, as I've got back in, as the weather warms up, to my more realist work. I don't want to stop doing that. I don't feel that I'm a very competent abstract painter. I'm not hugely motivated to be one, although I have respect for various abstract artists, and sometimes find stuff that I like in more than a sort of fairly cursory or surface level way. But I think I'm a realist painter at heart. I think I always will be. But I've got these tendencies to create mess and to enjoy the process of allowing the paints and the materials and the surfaces to do their thing, and to use my materials as organically as possible, and in a way to sort of reflect the nature I see around me and I spend so much time in, and to sort of find that synthesis between the natural and the artificial, to allow my artificial materials to behave as naturally as they possibly can. And so this is what seems to have happened, in that I'm starting to more and more appreciate how to create visual landscapes that I can appreciate in their own right, and also to then be able to use those as part of my realist practice in such a way that it gives the most scope for both sides of my practice to shine, and that the one element enhances the other, and I think it's allowed me to give my work a lot more emotional resonance, and the discipline that I've learned here is not how to make good abstract bases for my work. It's how to not eradicate those and use them to build up on something more representative without one thing overpowering the other. And this is about learning when to stop, and starting to see my more organic elements of my work as just as important as the rest of it, and really learning that when I step back and see something that I think looks good already, and if not great already, that I should probably just stop. And there's always usually some need or motivation to tidy things up and balance and even things up a bit, but to do the bare minimum from that point, or even just to put it away and not touch it and come back to it later with fresh eyes, to ensure that I don't overwork it now, and in the hopes that with a bit of distance from it I'll see it for its constituent parts and as a whole, and know what to do with it. So what does all this have to do with me being really prolific? Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but because I'm stepping back and feeling like I know when to stop, I'm not spending so much time on each piece. I'm not spending time overworking and then trying to compensate for that. I'm just stopping and adding the new piece to the pile and moving on. And it's quite rewarding in that sense, because I feel like I'm being productive and I'm progressing. The more of these pieces I churn through, the more experimental I can be, and the less emphasis is placed on any given piece to be perfect. And so it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling cycle, a self-perpetuating cycle, that as I do more, I gain confidence, therefore I do more and more. And that's great. And honestly, I could stop there and say, job done, I'm in a good place, except for the fact I'm getting through loads more material, I'm creating loads more artworks which are taking up loads more space, I'm not getting rid of them, my next show isn't for quite a while, and so I'm accumulating artworks, and like also in terms of sharing them on the internet or whatever, maybe putting them up for sale. I'm doing too many, I can't keep up, and quite frankly I don't really like doing any of that stuff, and therefore I'll put it off, and the longer I put it off for, the more I'm accumulating, and the more then I've got to deal with at a later date, and I've got so much of this now that I don't even remember half of them. And so I need to pull them out as well, because there's a great pleasure in doing that, in hiding your artworks away and then getting them out and looking at them, especially when you can put multiple together and you can see them side by side and you can see how there's a progression, but also where you can find little, you know, triptychs or diptychs within them, little collections that sort of work together. Maybe they were done at the same time or at different times. It's a really wonderful feeling when you can spread your stuff out like that and really start to see what you've been doing and trace the line back and see where the progressions happened and where there were missteps, and see stuff that maybe not up to standard and that could do with a bit more work or whatever. So really my main issue here is a nice problem to have. I've got too much work. So I'm not really in the market here for complaining about that, but it does come with its own practical considerations, and I'll have to stop at some point and think about that. But I'm very loath to get off the wave, and I'm going to keep running with it because it's so enjoyable. And so I mean, what's the lesson here? I guess it's to know that improving your artistic practice isn't all about moving towards a point. It isn't always about the skills that you have that find their way onto the canvas or the paper or the page. Sometimes it's about the skill you have to not exercise those skills. Sometimes restraint leads to not only better work, it can lead to more work. It can lead to more progression. It feels like when you're restraining yourself, then somehow you're getting less, but sometimes you're getting more. And the idea that knowing when to stop, you know, is a hard-won battle. And it's arguably, let's be clear here, I don't think I've won that war, but I certainly feel like I've made some headway, and that's been hard and long coming, and a problem that I've known I've had that is purely psychological, that I just couldn't find my way to fixing, and therefore has been a bit of a problem for me for quite a while. And the fact that I've been able to stand back and observe that I have to some degree addressed that and conquered it is possibly one of the more important landmarks in my artistic practice. It's something I'm most proud of, and I guess I'll find out when, because virtually no one's seen any of this new work. I guess I'll find out when I show it to people and they tell me, my God, that's horrible. Why are you showing stuff that's not finished? I guess in some sense it doesn't matter. The only person it matters to is me, whether I think it's finished or not. But I don't think my work looks unfinished. I think it's just going to look a lot more organic than much of my other stuff, and is giving me more pleasure to produce. And I'm not going to stop doing some of the more worked pieces, because I do still enjoy that as well, but I need to be in a very particular frame of mind for that. And for example, some of my most recent pieces started out with the intention of being much more detail orientated, and I just couldn't do it, didn't want to, was having too much fun. Oh, hello sheep. Don't know if you can hear the sheep. The sheep are running towards me, but there is a fence. Hello sheepies. Wow, there's lots of them. I'll just let you listen to that for a minute. I'm not the farmer, sheepies. I've got no food for you. Yeah, whatever. There you go. Welcome to the countryside. Anyway, that was probably a... they're probably telling me I'm talking too much. Mate, you finished your... Mate, you finished your podcast like 5 minutes ago. Why the fuck are you still talking? Even the sheep know that I don't know when to stop. I mean, surely that's something there, right? Even the sheep know when I'm talking too much. And so I might be better at finishing my artworks, but finishing my podcast episodes, lesson still to be learned. So I will cut my losses in this one and stop talking now. I'll see you all soon. Don't let the sheep get to you.
Art Against Mental Illness.